Alors, bonjour, ça va? Et aujourd'hui, je veux faire juste une vidéo en partie en français et en partie en anglais. Because my French is not proficient enough to do an entire video in French, but you know, most of my viewers are from English-speaking countries, so there's really no point doing an entire video in French. But anyway, today we're going to go through 3 lessons that I've learned from my own little French learning journey for the past year and a half, because I officially picked up this magnificent language a year and 6 months ago from a first-year French unit. And it was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. And along the way, I've learned a few lessons. And this video is going to be about how do you start speaking your target language ASAP. Because a lot of people get into this trap, which we're going to talk about in just a second. But before anything else, here's a grand shout out to today's video sponsor, Babbel Live. Babbel, at least in my memory, used to be this app that was really great to get people speaking their target languages, because they have this little feature in there that allows you to review your verbs, review your nouns, review your grammar rules based on a speech pattern. So you could internalize whatever you've learned through speaking. So that's why the app is called Babbel. You learn through babbling, which is how babies learn languages. But lo and behold, when these guys reached out to me, they were like, hey, there's this new thing called Babbel Live, and it is not just a Zoom call, it is not just your stiff university lectures. They were actually French lessons taught by native speakers that you could enjoy alongside with a very small class. So I jumped on the wagon, I hopped into a class, and the class was about the human body. Okay. That was a really interesting lesson, and I really enjoyed the atmosphere of the class. All the students were extremely supportive, so if you're kind of like an awkward person, if you are the kind of person that's kind of nervous in front of other people when you speak a different language, well, and Babbel Live is going to offer you the safe space for you to practice that language beyond just grammar drills, beyond just speaking comprehensions, beyond just a normal Babbel package, which is also an excellent way for you to practice your French, so you could learn the lesson first and bring out the knowledge that you've learned from your individual classes to a Babbel Live class. And as a lucky viewer of this channel, Babbel Live is offering students, a lot of you guys, probably all of you guys, a special discount if you follow the link in the description down below. So if you want to polish your Russian, if you want to like practice your French, le français, if you want to do anything, if you want to order like a café langer, if you want to banter with people in your chosen language, target language, be sure to sign up for Babbel Live. It is great to hop on Babbel and start speaking, and let us dive into today's subject, today's lesson, so to speak. Anyway, the first ever lesson that I've learned from, acquiring foreign language was that grammar actually doesn't do anything. It's not exactly the case that grammar isn't important. It's just that universities have the wrong kind of emphasis on how much grammar is required before you could start speaking the thing. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You walk into a French class, you see a person, they sit down and they tell you that they've learned French for like 7 years, yet if you drag this person to a French cafe or a French Capri, they just can't let out a word of French to the waiter and waitresses to order something in French. Because too much grammar and too much learning, that's just going to paralyze you. Speaking and grammar are 2 completely different faculties. You can know the grammar rules extremely well. You can even start writing in French, but you might not be able to speak a word of French. Because French just happened to be a language that's extremely hard to pronounce for English speakers. The staple phrase that I use to test how good my pronunciation is, or this is the phrase that I give to people if they want a little gauge, if they want a litmus test in terms of like how good their pronunciation is, I would get them to say I am lost in French, which is je suis perdu. Simple enough, but this is a phrase, or especially, the last word of the phrase, perdu. This word includes 2 vowels that simply don't exist in the English language. It is the R and the U, perdu. And if someone's not that good at pronouncing French words, they would simply say perdu, because it's like the most logical thing to do is to rely on the speech patterns that you've had for your whole life. The way that you overcome this kind of like, I know a lot of grammar, but I don't know how to speak, is through actively practicing to yourself without the pressure or without judgment, without external criticism.
I think it's better for the immersion, first of all. It's way better for the immersion and random stuff like, you're doing your chores and you narrate your life in French, for example. It can be good, like, oh, je me fais un café, je prends le lait, je mets le lait dans le café, un café crème.
And here's my recommendation for you, or should I say my prescription for you. You need to construct yourself a language corridor. That sounds a bit obscure, but let me explain. So that's the left-hand end of my apartment, and there's this corridor that leads all the way down to the front door. What you need to do is that you need to find a similar corridor, and you need to walk down the corridor and back and forth and mumble to yourself in absolute nonsense. But you need to get over the speaking barrier by speaking gibberish, because this is the way, this is how babies learn how to speak. Somewhere along that back and forth, something's gonna make sense. You're gonna be like, oh, that's what that grammar was. And then grammar lessons from that point is just gonna complement your speaking. You know, speaking grammar, and also alongside that walk, that gibberish walk, be sure to watch authentic French shows or French TV shows, comedies, and whatnot. Bottom line, don't let grammar paralyze you from speaking. And the second lesson that I've learned from my 1.5 years of French so far was that you have to speak to native speakers, because French is not just a static thing. French language, you can learn it from university, you can learn the perfect grammar rules, but there's so many idiosyncratic things. There's so many things that it's just impossible for textbooks to teach you.
You need French people to learn slangs, to learn ways of saying things. For example, the most common one is when you learn French and you want to say, I am happy. The scholar way of saying that is, je suis content. But the thing is, we don't speak like that. We like crush some words together and it's je suis content.
A very good example is the phrase I don't know in French. Je ne sais pas. Simple enough, but in real life, real people, real French people, they don't talk like that. No one's gonna say to you, je ne sais pas, unless he's, you know, incredibly academic and, you know, up his own ass. Instead, you're probably gonna hear something like je sais pas, idiosyncrasies, and little slangs that you'll pick up along the way. Most of them are really, really funny, as Lou would tell you.
If you want to say to someone, oh, you're bothering me, but in a very raw way, it's like, tu me casses les couilles, which literally means you're breaking my nuts. Or if you want to say that, for example, something occurs and you're not happy with it, you're like, oh, I can't be bothered, I can't be asked. You say, ça me casse les couilles. One as well, like, oh, tu fais chier, mec. Like, oh, bruv, oh, you're so annoying, bro.
And a third and last lesson, which is probably for me the most important one that I had to embrace, was that you need to accept that you're gonna have an accent. You're gonna have this funky accent when you speak a second language or a foreign language. Because literally, when you speak a language, that's you using your mouth in a certain way, and you've spoken this language for your entire life, you're gonna retain that muscle memory. It's really hard to break out of it. And that's why, quand je parle français, j'ai juste un petit peu accent américain. You're gonna know I'm not a native French speaker when I speak French. But Lo, then again, seem to disagree.
Oh là là, j'aime trop ton accent. Ton accent, il est parfait. Il est vraiment parfait.
Especially when you meet French people, we're very, very proud of being French. It's a thing. When you speak French as a beginner to French people, everyone's gonna be like, oh my god, yes, we're gonna try to accommodate to English because we love English, but we're so shit at it, like literally. I think Spain and France are the countries that are so like the less like the worst at English, I think.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes, all right? Making mistakes is just like a process of learning. It's how you learn. It's how you progress through this language learning journey. For example, in my mind, somehow the word for a cake and a gift, they're somehow mixed up. I was speaking to my French friend Paul the other day at this little French cafe, and we were talking in French, we were conversing in French. So when I bought Paul this little notebook as a gift, and I just said to him, je te présente un gâteau, which means let me give you a cake. And he looked around and he was like, where's the cake? I'm like, it's supposed to be cadeau. So be prepared for a lot of embarrassing crap to happen to you when you're trying to use a new language.
Even French people make mistakes all the time. It drives me crazy, especially through text, you know, like spelling mistakes, and I'm a grammar nerd, so.
But I promise you that the minute that you start speaking the thing, the minute that you start actually getting into the grooves of the thing, I mean, right now, I'm conversationally fluent, but I'm not completely proficient in the language yet, but even just the taste of being kind of like fluent in little conversations, it was enough to keep me going. And this is literally an addiction for me. And those are some of the tips that I've learned from my 1.5 years of French, and I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Check out Babbel in the description down below, and also check out Lo's amazing Instagram account in the description down below. For now, that's all I have for tonight, and merci et abonne-toi. Au revoir.